What do you do when you feel stressed? How do you currently manage? The one thing that is not particularly helpful, I have to say, you got to relax more. Why aren't you feeling relaxed? You got to relax. You need to take some time off and relax. Are you relaxed yet? Nothing less relaxing than being forcefully told you have to relax. This sentiment is reflected in this article from Forbes, the negative impact of toxic positivity in the workplace. When people cannot be their full negative selves, when you can't give the impression of being a little bit down and everyone is forced to be upbeat, forced to be positive, that also has this long, lingering negativity, maybe not quite toxicity, but certainly can't be helpful if you have to be very happy every day by force because your boss tells you you need to be happy. There's a fine line there, isn't it? You can embed a culture where, hey, the negative things will happen. Let's support each other and find ways to collectively arrive at a place where it's okay to not be okay. The majority of my audience are individual employees, right? That you somehow feel under the thumb of the big system or the big organization you work in, or maybe you haven't been able to progress in your career as quickly as you'd like. I always like to focus on the strategies that individual employees can take to protect ourselves in the long run, including physical exercise, mindfulness training, as well as psychotherapy. But the one that matters the most to me is self-assessment. That is the category of burnout prevention that's impacted me most personally. And the resource that's the most public-facing and quite useful, not too filled with jargon, comes courtesy of the Black Dog Institute in Australia and their 4-step self-care plan, defining what self-care actually is, the activities and practices that we deliberately choose to engage in regularly to maintain and enhance our health and well-being, especially as it relates to stress, anxiety, which snowballs ultimately into something like burnout. And it has 4 steps. I think step 1 is the most important and also the hardest to do. Step 1 is to evaluate your coping skills and your current habits when stress gets to you. What do you do when you feel stressed? How do you currently manage? Do you think your management and coping strategy is a positive habit that will let you cope better over time? Or is it a negative strategy that will actually ding and deteriorate your health over time so that as more stress comes along, as you continue to cope, you're actually getting worse and worse at the thing that you should be getting better and better at? Some examples of positive coping strategies: deep breathing, sounds simple enough. Listening to music, exercising, meditation, reading, connecting with others, and engaging in a hobby. Out of all of those, I probably do all of them except connecting with others and engaging in a hobby regularly. I do tend to self-isolate a little bit when the going gets tough. I just like to hunker down and get my work done, and often that doesn't leave much time for connecting with other people. So I need to be more deliberate in putting that strategy into place, certainly at the end of the year, certainly for the start of 2024, and engaging in a hobby. One of the key tent poles for how I'm planning on fixing my burnout in 2024 and hopefully going into the future. I'll come back to this point later on. The negative coping mechanisms: yelling. I'm not a big yeller. Smoking. I'm not a smoker. Pacing. I do tend to pace. Skipping meals. I do skip some meals. Drinking alcohol to excess. I'm not a drinker, so that's not the one for me. Withdraw from friends and family or biting of fingernails. I don't really bite my fingernails, but the thing that really gets me is lose out on sleep is how I cope. I either don't sleep because I'm too stressed, or I just work until very, very late, so I don't get as much sleep or don't have as much bandwidth for sleep. That is very much a negative coping strategy and something that I'm hoping to improve in the new year. Looking at all of these mechanisms, you should write down, hopefully journaling is part of a positive habit you can do, along with meditation, and really identify what are the negative habits that you do when you get stressed and the positive habits that you may sometimes do when you're stressed, and lean in and focus on the positive ones and try and cut down on the negative coping strategies. And that leads to step 2, which is identifying your daily self-care needs, what you value and what you need in your everyday life. And then once you do this, once you put a template into place, once you put a first draft of a self-care plan, it is by no means binding. That's the other thing. It's not a contract. Also, there's no guarantee that you'll stick to it. Step 3 is you have to reflect, examine, and replace. Once you have this sense of the habits that are positive in your coping mechanisms for stress and anxiety, you have to constantly go back and reflect, examine, and replace to really refine your self-care plan over time. And step 4 is to then, once you've reflected over a period of time, see what's working, and then you actually put your self-care plan plan into place